Author's new book. Douluo. From capturing the goddess to being invincible, leisure article, brainstorming article, semi-invincible, not following the original work, Huaxia genius Luo Yu unexpectedly crosses Douluo, awakens his rebellious martial soul at the beginning, suppresses Shrek 7 monsters, destroys the same generation of Tianjiao, suspends the title Douluo, and pushes Xinqi horizontally with one hand shoving her sisters. Luo Yu is too strong. The revitalization of Tianshui University is expected. Ning Rongrong. Don't call me little witch, she's too grand to breathe in front of brother Yu. Zhu Zhuqing. Compared to that scumbag, Luo Yu is simply his ideal type. Xiao Wu. Why would third brother be easily crushed by him even though he has countless secret skills? Master Ning Fengji of the Seven Treasures Glass Sect. Luo Yu, you want a wife not to keywords of the novel. Douluo's Dark Knight Lord no pop-ups, Douluo's Dark Knight Lord TXT Complete Collection Download, Douluo's Dark Knight Lord Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Night Tour Imperial Censor Lin Douluo, New Book. Young Seedlings Seeking Recommended Tickets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Night Journey Censor Lin Douluo, New Book Seedlings Seeking Recommendation Tickets. Huaxia is an extremely deep part of the Kunlun Mountains. It is already late at night. The dark clouds cover the moon, the starlight fades away, and the darkness sweeps across the entire earth like a tide, swallowing up all the light. Although it was a wilderness, it was quiet and terrifying, with no sound of jungle birds, revealing an indescribable strangeness. A group of quirky black-clothed people are living in the endless darkness of this place, dressed in uniform black attire. The position of Jin Zhuang's chest is outlined with silver thread, creating a strange and complex pattern, resembling an exquisite mansion. There was no lighting around, but everyone was neatly arranged together, standing solemnly and nervously on the back of a tall and luxurious dark throne. The sound of rustling occasionally broke the silence and spread from the throne. The members of the Night Lord behind the dark throne couldn't help but swallow their saliva, sighing at the Lord's courage, while their eyes stared fixedly at the cliff in front of the throne. Under the cliff is a deep pit that is more than 10,000 meters wide and geometrically deep. As time goes by, it seems that an inexplicable and terrifying aura is gradually awakening deep underground. In the crowd, a man with a cold sweat on his forehead couldn't bear it anymore and respectfully bowed to the dark throne, saying, "Sir, the legendary prophecy of the destruction of the world may be about to appear." The figure on the throne pushed his hand to stop him, silent, and focused on flipping through a book. The man, relying on his night vision ability, couldn't help but twitch at the corners of his mouth when he saw the four big characters, Douluo Continent, on the cover. He looked anxiously under the cliff, but dared not say much to the figure. As the breath within the deep pit gradually revived, the rocks on the cliff rolled and the entire Kunlun Mountains trembled violently. At this moment, the figure on the throne finally flipped to the last page, slowly closing the book and getting up, revealing a peerless face like that of a banished immortal in the darkness. Black and bright vertical long hair, slanted sword eyebrows flying with heroic aura, slender and containing sharp black eyes, thin and lightly pursed lips, sharp and angular contours, slender and tall figure, like an eagle in the eternal night, cold and proud, solitary yet full of aggression. Master. All the members of the Jinya department bowed respectfully and saluted. While feeling amazed by the other person's refined demeanor, seeing the young man finally stand up, even though the earth is shaking at this moment, there is still an inexplicable sense of peace of mind. Luo Yu, the most talented young master of the night-traveling Imperial Censor clan, is also the youngest Grand Master of the Night Control Bureau in history. At the young age of only 18, he was recognized by the ancestral Huangyao flag and freely controlled the ancient 70.2 beast statues within the flag. With just one soul-striking hammer and one soul-striking gong, he defeated all the strange people and extraordinary warriors within the Jinya Sea, overwhelming the new and old strong, and forcefully ascended to the position of ruler, commanding over 1,000 members of the Huaxia Jinya Sea tribe. Lao Wu, Luo Yu said calmly. Here. The figure walked out respectfully and humbly. Wow. Luo Yu threw the Douluo continent in his hand heavily into the hands of the figure. This. The figure looked up in confusion. The young man's handsome eyebrows furrowed together at this moment, and his tone was quite dissatisfied, saying, "Come back and send me a little gift for this author." A small gift. Luo Yu frowned and turned his head to look at the deep pit of the canyon, which was producing sharp cracks and fluctuations. He didn't see any panic, and his empty hand gripped the void. A sharp and rustling blue and black flag, covering the sky, emerged from the air. Above the flag surged waves that seemed to come from ancient times. The extraordinary flag surface seemed to have thousands of beasts galloping, emitting a brilliant heavenly power. What kind of writing is not good? I insist on abusing you. The flag burst out with a brilliant light, and on top of it appeared strange beast stripes outlined by mysterious silk threads. In an instant, it seemed like the phantom of a strange beast swallowing the sky and devouring the earth appeared, carrying an extraordinary terrifying aura as it left the flag and roared towards the restless bottom of the pit. Boom! In the darkness, dazzling energy sparks burst forth, and a mushroom cloud exploded and roared from the bottom of the deep pit amidst the shaking of the earth and mountains. At this moment, Old Five, holding a book, was sweating profusely and silently mourning for the author of the novel. He began to ponder the choice of a small gift in his heart. Blade. Iron pliers. Wolf tooth stick. Broken star hammer. Forget it, let's have a box of everything. Looking at the majestic and domineering Luo Yu ahead, it seemed that his anger was still lingering, and Lao Wu trembled nervously for a moment. How about going directly to the military headquarters and dispatching a bomber to visit the author's house and have him modify the script? The sound of high heels stepping on the ground came out. At this moment, a tall and curvaceous mature woman with a front protruding and back curling hot to the extreme had few pieces of fabric on her body. She swayed her seductive body and leaned towards Luo Yu's side. A pair of charming eyes filled the man with confusion and admiration. The woman lightly lifted her vermilion lips and was about to speak. "Stay away," Luo Yu said coldly. The woman retreated in grievance, but extended her crimson tongue and licked her rosy lips, admiring the other person's indifferent side face even more. Luo Yu raised his hand and waved a powerful force that appeared out of thin air in the dark night, brushing away the smoke and dust between the canyons and observing the underground. Her straight black hair swayed with the wind, and her stunning appearance caught the attention of a woman's beautiful eyes. Buzz. After a brief moment of calm, terrifying waves spread from beneath the canyon, and a towering array shot rapidly from underground into the sky. The large array reflected in the void, suddenly illuminating the night. Endless mountains, rivers and streams are all revealed, towering and vast. Birds, beasts, insects, and fish are leaping with scales and claws, and the sun, moon, and stars are sitting in the center of the great formation, which is unparalleled. As they watched the snow-capped mountains in the sky transform into the ocean, the vast sea transform into mulberry fields, as if a large formation was gathering the ever-changing life and death of the heavens. The people of the Zhenyi Sea widened their eyes and felt a shiver in their bodies. The Zhou Tian Star Do Formation. Luo Yu stood up with black eyes, recalling ancient books in his mind. His eyebrows conveyed a shock, and his lips and teeth spoke softly. No. There is also the shadow of the Hunyuan River Luo Formation. Is this needing the several large formations guarding the heavenly court in Shanggu town together? What kind of ghost is being suppressed here? Is the prophesied destruction true? After a brief and brilliant eruption, the supreme formation in the sky seems to be falling and withering, and its aura is becoming weaker and weaker. Listen to the orders of the Xingye department. Luo Yu frowned and roared. On. Hurry up and leave Kunlun. That task. Everyone hesitated and worried. Stop talking nonsense, all the labor and capital will roll down the mountain. I'm here. Luoyu seemed to feel the impending great terror and urged everyone to evacuate quickly. The yellow demon flag came out of his hand and hung high behind him, with an ancient soul-suppressing hammer and a soul-stirring gong covered in fine gold patterns appearing in his hand simultaneously. The strong and mysterious power of the night began to gather around him, and his already extraordinary temperament underwent a drastic change at this moment. Click, boom. As the ancient formation withered, the sound of shackles breaking could be heard from deep underground. Two beams of light, one gold and one silver, shot straight into the sky and spewed out thinly. In order not to take off their hind legs, everyone left, leaving Luoyu alone. Outside the Kunlun Mountains, the members of the Jinya department were all anxiously staring into the distance. In the mountains of Kunlun, there seems to be a golden sun that can melt the sky and earth, rising from afar. It is more like a cold and clear moon that can freeze for thousands of miles, and their breath seems to be constantly increasing as they get out of trouble. Zhen. The domineering and unparalleled voice suddenly echoed from thousands of miles between Kunlun Mountains, echoing countless echoes. The woman covered her red lips and said, "What kind of monster is it? How could it force adults to awaken their bloodline?" Someone approached and said, "Whatever it is, once the bloodline of the night-traveling Censor awakens in the dark, he can control the power of the night and transform into the Dark Lord." Who is his opponent? The sky exudes a dazzling aura, and the great sun seems to transform into a golden dragon ascending to the sky. The clear moon turns to an ice phoenix spreading its wings, and the deafening dragon sings and the ice phoenix roars. In the end, the dragon phoenix symphony merges into one, and a round of yin and yang appears in the air. Malgobi. Labor and management have become the head of the night department in this town, and assuming this responsibility really deserves to die young. The arrogant and roaring word spread, and the figure carrying the surging power of the night transformed into a soaring black-scaled dragon, decisively colliding with yin and yang. Collapse. As if a certain balance has been disrupted, yin and yang have been reversed. At this moment, the sky shattered like a mirror, breaking inch by inch. The extremely deep black hole briefly appeared, and everything returned to calm. Between the broken ridges of Kunlun Mountains, there are traces of broken mountains and rivers. A group of people pursed their mouths and looked depressed. The fiery woman cried the most sadly, and the master of their night control department disappeared in the battle. Douluo continent, a wilderness outside the sunset forest within the territory of the Tiendo Empire. It was already evening, and the faint afterglow of the sunset reflected the clouds on the horizon. A figure with a messy figure in a coma fell heavily from the black hole created by the turbulence of time and space. In the pit where the figure is located, there are occasional low-level soul beasts passing by. As soon as a swift praying mantis with its triangular eyes exposed with bloody serrations approaches, it is startled back by the terrifying radiance of the figure's palm shaking. Half of the figure's body shimmered with gold, revealing infinite heat energy, while the other half shimmered with silver, emitting an absolute 0-degree cold light. There seemed to be a mysterious and ancient black flow between the distinct golden light and cold light, striving to protect the man's body. In the end, all the luster slowly disappeared, and a golden sun appeared in the left palm of the figure, while a silver crescent appeared in the right palm. In the gold, there seemed to be the roar of dragons, and in the silver light, the roar of phoenixes could not be stopped. Haori and Crescent disappeared simultaneously, and the suburbs returned to tranquility, with only a figure dressed in rags lying alone here. Cluck, cluck. The sound of the carriage came from afar, accompanied by the gentle and graceful voice of the young girl. "Grandpa Hua, you said I found a second soul ring that fits me this time, so I shouldn't be afraid of the Blaze Academy challenging our Tianxue." The speaker was a stunning young girl with long water blue hair and a fair and beautiful face adorned with delicate features. The girl sat in the carriage, her budding body emitting a delicate yet slightly aloof and noble aura. The old man, who was driving a carriage ahead and had a kind face and a hunched body, turned his head and said with a silly smile, Miss Binger's age is far younger than that of Huo Wushuang and Huo Wu in the Blazing Academy. Being able to draw is already very strong. Shui Binger furrowed her beautiful willow leaf eyebrows, but her soft words revealed determination. Jinshui Academy cannot lose to Blaze Academy with me. Since I am the captain, the dignity and honor of the academy should naturally be defended by me. The old man smiled and nodded, Miss Binger can definitely do it. The words didn't finish, and a soft voice came out. What's wrong, Grandpa Hua? Shui Binger asked. The old man stared at a dark figure lying on the slanted side of the carriage, hesitating for a moment before finally shaking his head. It's okay, let's keep walking. New people send books, brothers and sisters support a wave of tickets. Now, starting at 5 o'clock every day, with a large quantity and full management, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Go is the villain of the royal family, and his bloodline suddenly appears in the dark night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Go is the villain of the royal family, and his bloodline suddenly appears in the dark night. Shui Binger looked at the old man's strange appearance and followed the direction of his gaze just now. Grandpa Hua, there's someone over there. Shui Binger lifted King Kanju and pointed at the figure. The old man continued to drive the carriage forward and turned around with a bitter smile, saying, Miss Binger, I have seen it too. It's just from the wilderness, be careful not to deceive. Shui Binger bit her red lips and said, he seems to be injured. Let's go take a look. You are already the sole emperor's cultivation, and who can be afraid of these little thieves in the mountains and fields? Little Ancestor, the relationship between Xiangjia Sex Hianzhen and the Martial Soul Hall has been very ambiguous recently. We have refused the invitation from the Martial Soul Hall again. Be careful when going out. Shui Binger nodded with a glint of inspiration in her beautiful eyes as she pondered, Grandpa Hua, let's get closer and observe at a distance. If the situation doesn't go right, it's fine. If there is an ambush in the distance, we won't be able to leave now. The old man stopped the carriage and cursed with a smile, you little girl, how can you establish yourself in the mainland after being so kind? Humph, they are kind and not foolish. When it's time to be ruthless, I won't be soft-hearted, the girl pouted and waved her pink fist. Grandpa Hua, fortunately we didn't leave, otherwise this young man would have exposed his body in the wilderness, Shui Binger said happily. The young man in front of him closed his eyes tightly and his face was covered in stains, making it difficult to see his appearance clearly. The tattered clothes he was wearing were too wide and did not fit the boy's figure, full of discord. The old man hesitated, although his face was full of reluctance, he couldn't resist Shui Binger's gaze in the end. He crouched down and grabbed the young man's wrist, the injury was severe, with damage to all 5 organs and 6 internal organs. Strange, is there any problem? Shui Binger asked. There is no trace of soul power cultivation at all, and the body's condition is surprisingly poor. It is simply a miracle to be able to live until now, the old man exclaimed. Shui Binger couldn't bear to flash in her eyes and didn't speak. Her jade hand shook the old man's arm a few times. The old man surrendered and raised his hand, spoiling him, saying, this young man is a bit strange, but at least I am also a soul emperor. I can't delay Miss from doing good things. You mock me. Shui Binger. Then throw him here. Grandpa Hua. The girl stomped her feet repeatedly to express dissatisfaction. The old man mentioned the unconscious boy and casually threw him at the edge of his carriage, shaking his head repeatedly and saying, my soul power is too domineering. I'm afraid this boy's body won't be able to handle it immediately. If I want to treat him, I'll have to go back to the city. Then you can throw him into the carriage, and I'll sit outside with you, said Shui Binger. Oh, you. The old man nodded at the girl's forehead, not yet understanding her meaning. It was because he was afraid of bumping outside, and the young man couldn't bear it before he arrived. The carriage continued to drive on the road, and it was getting late. For Shui Binger and the old man, it's nothing more than saving an injured person out of kindness. As night falls, darkness covers the earth. Inside the carriage, there began to be a mysterious black mist flowing around Luo Yu's body, and his injuries were gradually recovering. All of this did not disturb Shui Binger and the old man outside. As he was about to return to Tianshui City with 20 or 30 miles left, the old man on the carriage couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seemed that he was really suspicious and worried too much. Dong, dong. A sudden mutation occurred, and 3 masked burly figures bounced up from the night sky, hitting the front of the carriage heavily, shattering the soil and rock beneath their feet. The old man's eyes were fast and his hands were fast. Behind him appeared a phantom of an ice bear, with 6 soul rings of yellow, yellow, purple, 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 and black. He forcefully pulled the frightened and about to run free horse. Looking at the 3 burly masked figures suddenly rushing forward, the old man's body trembled and he snorted coldly, "What do you 3 have to do, but for the sake of wealth? Old thing, don't talk nonsense." A rough and irritable voice came from the middle of the crowd, and the 7 circle soul rings slowly rose, indicating the strength of the soul saint of the incoming person. The other 2 raised 6 soul rings under their feet, all of which were the cultivation of the soul emperor. The old man's pupils contracted and he quickly pulled up Shui Binger beside him, saying, "Miss, run quickly." The burly man in the middle snorted coldly, "Run. You all stay here today." The roar of a giant elephant echoed through the sky, and the massive body of a diamond mammoth emerged behind him. The other 2 summoned martial souls at the same time, directly blocking their way. The old man gritted his teeth and didn't say anything. The appearance of the other party already represented the determination of certain forces to surrender. The 6th soul skill, the Bear King, tore apart the sky. The black soul ring rose up, and the old man launched a desperate posture, deciding to open a gap from the nearby soul emperor and escape with Shui Binger. Watching the 3 ice claws piercing through the long air raid and attacking our side, the middle-aged soul saint grinned fiercely, surprisingly not showing any signs of being too big. His body size instantly skyrocketed, and his martial soul was possessed and transformed into a giant elephant. He used all his strength, vowing to kill the enemy in one fell swoop. 7th soul skill. Mammoth's true body. 6th soul skill. Elephant galloping on the ground. The strength of the martial soul's true body is visible and average. It directly chased the old man, shattered his soul skills, and the next palm hit the old man's heart. Shit. A mouthful of blood spurted out, and the old man and Shui Binger both flew out horizontally and fell to the ground. 3 burly figures galloped towards the 2 people who were about to rise up from the ground and resist. "Don't say you can't leave on your own, old man. How could you still want to break through with a useless little girl in front of your brothers?" Shui Binger bit her red lips tightly and supported the old man beside her, saying nothing. Faced with the soul saint, a fearful emotion lingered in her heart, and her trembling delicate body revealed her current state of mind. However, the stubbornness and perseverance that appeared in her beautiful eyes were her attitude. "This little girl is not bad, let the men have a blast later." Pa. The middle-aged soul saint slapped the speaker's head directly. "Damn it, the villain died from talking too much. Do you know what? It's a long dream at night. Hurry up and don't be fooled." As for being so careful, the beaten soul emperor muttered softly, but still following the boss's instructions, the 6th soul ring lit up, intending to directly result in this old and young. The old man nodded and said with guilt, "Binger, it's Grandpa Hua who has no ability to protect you." Shui Binger shook her head, her delicate and beautiful face revealing an indomitable expression, and the top-level ice phoenix martial soul suddenly appeared. Humph. The soul saint stood up and stared, crushing his power, directly shattering Shui Binger's martial soul concentration. The girl was devoured by soul power, and a crimson blood stain appeared at the corner of her mouth, with a hint of desolation between her stunning beauty. Is this the soul saint, so strong? Despair flashed in the girl's eyes, and in an instant, she remembered many things. The ideal of a powerful Tianshui academy had not yet been realized. How dare a mere ant attempt to resist, sneered. Hands on. The soul saint paired with two soul emperors really looks up to my old man, Binger. I didn't expect him to be so shameless, the old man said with a mournful smile, looking at the young girl with guilt. Shui Binger shook her head, wiping the blood from the corners of her mouth, desperately gathering her soul power. Although her face showed despair, even though she knew she was invincible, she would never give up resistance. At the moment when the Soul Emperor was about to take action, the moonlight disappeared, the starlight disappeared, and the night became the only melody in this place. The soul light emanating from everyone's body was swaying and swaying under the invasion of the night, like a candle in the wind. Pop 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 pop, the sound of applause emanated from the thick darkness. Who is pretending to be a god or a ghost? The soul saint's eyelids twitched and he looked around cautiously. Pretending to be a god or a ghost. Being an honest person is not good. The indifferent and disdainful tone in the darkness seemed to have a hint of fatigue and laziness. The faces of Shui Binger and the old man, who were originally in despair, were filled with astonishment. Sha sha. A tall and ghostly figure slowly emerged from the darkness, like a king in the darkness. The darkness around him seemed to be full of spirituality, as if he was constantly obeying and bowing to those who walked out. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Ancestor of Divine Beasts, The Legend of Holy Gods. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Ancestor of Divine Beasts, The Legend of Holy Gods, Boss. The two Soul Emperors shouted nervously. Watching the eerie and uncontrollable soul light possessed by his martial soul all around him, it began to flicker like a candle, causing his body to shrink in tension. Quietly taking steps, trembling and fearful as he looked at the dark figure, he approached the masked soul saint and sought a sense of security. The soul saint masked man was also full of fear at this moment, with a pair of chicken thief eyes full of suspicion. A few seconds later, he suddenly burst into laughter. The rat generation who hides his head and reveals his tail, since his words are so clear, dare you take my full blow. The wave of soul power surged wildly on his body, with a desperate posture. Oh! A playful voice came from the darkness, without any intervention, with a strong presence to watch the show. Why don't you two trash join me quickly, shouted the masked soul saint. Yes. The two soul emperors immediately went all out to mobilize their soul power to cooperate with the attack of the soul saint. Damn him! As the soul saint shouted, his breath rose to the extreme. Be careful. Shui Binger blinked her beautiful eyes and shouted anxiously at the tall and evil figure in the dark night. The configuration of one soul saint and two soul emperors is almost an invincible combination in Douluo small town. The two soul emperors received instructions to take action together, carrying the power of diamond mammoths and shuttling through the darkness, relentlessly smashing towards the figure. What? I saw the soul saint Han unexpectedly turn around and sprint in the opposite direction without hesitation while his two companions were ejecting, quickly leaving the battlefield. Watching this scene, Shui Binger and Hua Lao were stunned. They didn't know why the other party was timid before the battle, disregarding the dignity of Soul Saint. Leave your two companions behind and run straight away. The great man who fled with a fierce and terrifying expression on his eyebrows, wishing to infuse all his lifelong soul power into his legs. Two sabots, if someone dares to appear in front of you openly, they are not sure if they can kill you. Besides, the situation is still so strange. The big man turned his neck and quickly looked into the darkness, seeing that his two companions were about to pounce on him. He quickly sneered, when a bad person doesn't have a clue in their heart, can they live a long time without being meticulous? The attacking figure that came towards him seemed indifferent, but instead showed curiosity about the use of soul skills. The soul saint who fled from afar almost made him laugh. As the two soul emperors watched the leader escape, they cursed shamelessly and it was too late to stop. They had to grit their teeth and continue to output, feeling a glimmer of happiness in their hearts. If the other party were just a scumbag who was strong on the outside but weak on the inside, they would surely be able to mock the escaped rat generation. Okay, that's it. The tired voice came from the darkness. In an instant, the dark power between heaven and earth became restless, emitting a faint golden light. The thick and infinite power of the night not only lacked a sense of yin and evil, but also mixed with the noble and sacred power of the Zhao Zhao heavenly power. Two soul emperors carrying their attacks froze in the air, even the escaping soul saint could not escape. Amidst the horrified gazes of everyone on the field, the power of the night gathered together. A dark golden torrent rolled up, inside which seemed to be a black-scaled dragon soaring in the waves. The dense black scales had already scared the three of them. "What's your name, that girl over there?" the evil shadow in the darkness suddenly asked. Shui Binger was stunned by the magnificent dark golden scenery in the air, and only then came over when she heard the shout, "Me and me. My name is Shui Binger." Shui Binger. The figure seemed to remember something and asked with certainty, "Where is this?" "This is the territory of the Heavenly Dou Empire, near Tianshui City." Shui Binger felt that the other party had no ill intentions, and her replies were sharp. The soul saint's eyes, trapped in the distance, were spinning stealthily at this moment and shouted urgently, "Sir, it seems that you don't even know her, and you shouldn't be making things difficult for us because of this." "Shut up." Soul Saint felt that if he didn't speak anymore, he might not have a chance to save his life. He crazily shouted, "Your Majesty, isn't she just a beautiful woman? I am willing to be your lackey. Don't you know the ability to find beautiful women? Our lackeys have always had the most sensitive sense of smell." Black Shadow was almost amused, so he didn't even want it for the sake of survival and integrity. When did Douluo continent have such a talented person? How could he never have heard of it? Stretching out his fingers from the darkness, the dark golden power of the night condensed into 3 small earthworms covered in patterns in the air. They spun slowly and quickly penetrated the bodies of the 3. "You 3 can go now." The 2 soul emperors felt as if their bodies had been pardoned, so they ran straight away, but the masked soul saint did not leave. "Why didn't you leave?" The masked soul saint knelt on the ground with a mournful expression, tears streaming down his nose and saying, "Sir, please spare our lives." "What was that just now?" "Since becoming a villain, it's not easy for us. We've been worried all day." "It's not easy for you to still be a bad person," said the figure with some interest. The masked soul saint hesitated and said, "Isn't it like being a good person holding your breath and thinking that being a bad person has a future?" Black Shadow nodded and said, "You have the potential to be a bad person with your qualifications." However, the other party's words suddenly changed, and when the masked soul Saint Dun was struck, he was struck by lightning and felt that his life was not long. There's a truth you need to understand. If you're not the number 1 in the world, even if you're the second, if you want to do something bad, you have to weigh it a bit. The masked soul saint kneeling on the ground heard that there was no murderous intent in the other person's words. At this moment, his courage increased a bit, and he raised his eyelids and said, "Are you a good person or a bad person?" The figure seemed to chuckle lightly and said, "If I kill you, you would be a bad person, but for others, would you be considered a good person? Please spare your life, sir." The pupils of the masked soul saint suddenly enlarged, and his back was instantly soaked. He kowtowed frantically to apologize. The figure's eyes flickered faintly with a hint of contemplation. "All right, instead of using these careful thoughts to do evil, it's better to spend time improving your strength. I see you are also a talent that can be created, so I'll save your life." "Still not leaving?" "Sir, please speak up if you have any instructions." Although the masked soul saint is overjoyed, He understands that the other party must have some requirements for keeping him. Black Shadow nodded in satisfaction and said, "It's quite clever. You'll naturally know when I need you." The masked soul saint couldn't understand. "The power of the night that I have left within you is under my control, and when needed, I will naturally guide you to come and find me." The voice of the shadow turned cold and said, "Get out of here." The masked soul saint didn't have time to think, so he hugged his head and ran away. After running a long distance, he found that his two companions had died silently at some point, and couldn't help but feel scared. Having gained a profound understanding of the methods used by the shadows, the chubby face after being masked couldn't help but cry. This time, Tmo completely finished his bad deeds and didn't do much. He sacrificed his life first. What exactly is the other party's background? How could they have such strange methods? The venue became empty for a moment, and in the darkness, Shui Binger and Hua Lao could see some of the surrounding scenery clearly with the Soul Master's vision, but still couldn't see the towering dark figures of the evil spirits clearly. The figure in the darkness seemed to turn around and be about to leave. Shui Binger bit her red lips, with a grateful expression in her eyes and a hint of doubt. "Why did you save me?" Cough cough, a weak cough came from the darkness. "Maybe God thinks that even kind-hearted girls have good luck, so he sent me over." Shui Binger was completely confused because she couldn't understand, but she remembered the other party's kindness in her heart. She quickly stepped forward and gratefully said, "You saved me, I don't even know your name." Cough cough cough, the figure in the darkness seemed extremely weak, and in an instant, the power of the night in front of him appeared to loosen slightly, inadvertently revealing a demonic face like a banished fairy. Black and shiny long hair with a few strands of deep purple bangs, narrow eyes paired with a shaved face, instantly add a few points of brilliance to the surrounding darkness. The tilted corners of the mouth also vaguely reveal a hint of extraordinary, echoing the mysterious power of the darkness around them like a ruler's presence. This. Shui Binger was already dumbfounded for a moment. She thought that the one who could easily crush the soul saint would be the chivalrous and kind-hearted senior, but she didn't expect such a handsome and graceful young man. The appearance of an evil charm, coupled with the power to crush the soul saint, created a ripple in Shui Binger's long calm heart as the hero saved the beauty. Which girl doesn't embrace spring? I was stunned for a moment. The figure of cough 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 seemed to have difficulty supporting its physical strength, forcefully controlling its body to control the power of the surrounding night, covering its body and quickly leaving. Shui Bing shouted in a daze towards the darkness, "Would you like to leave your name? Binger will definitely receive a generous reward in the future." Thunderstorm. The faint tone hides deep achievements and fame, as if it never returns for thousands of miles. Lei Feng, Shui Binger said with a slight loss of focus and a firm tone, "I remember." The darkness receded like a tide, and a figure that was constantly shrinking sadly crawled back into the carriage in the darkness. Starlight resurfaced, and the bright moonlight shone across the sky and earth. Everything returned to tranquility. "Fortunately, someone helped us out, otherwise the two of us would have died." Hua Lao walked over, covering his chest. "How are you doing?" Shui Binger asked with concern, unable to tidy up her long blue hair. "No problem, this old bone can still hold on." At this time, the figure in the carriage had already woken up, his face was depressed and he heard the words of the old man outside repeatedly, and his heart rose to himself. "You can carry this old bone, I forced my blood to be cold." "Oh, it's strange," said Hua Lao. "What's wrong, Grandpa Hua?" "Who knocked the horse unconscious? The car didn't even overturn." "Oh, I forgot about him." Shui Binger frowned and ran anxiously towards the young man inside the car. She saw him still lying in the car with his eyes closed, but his body seemed to have deteriorated. "This kid is lucky. If such a big thing happened, the car wouldn't have overturned, otherwise he would have been finished," said Hua Lao. Grandpa Hua, let's go back quickly. Human life is important. Shui Binger covered the car curtain and used the soul power of water attributes to awaken the knocked-out horse. In the bumpy carriage, Luo Yu opened his eyes and looked at his body with anger. Even if it's Nima's time to travel, it seems like her body is only 10 years old now. What the hell? If it weren't for activating his bloodline as the night-traveling Imperial Censor, and relying on the power of the night to temporarily evolve and transform back into an adult, Luo Yu might have shed tears of frustration. Fortunately, he traveled through the Douluo continent, which he was quite familiar with. Luo Yu felt somewhat relieved and couldn't help but recall his scene in Kunlun Mountain. Facing the unparalleled destruction that emerged from unsealing, it was not until the end that he remembered the records he had seen on ancient bronze artifacts based on his family background. Make sure it's the legendary sun candle and the dim light of the underworld. These two are known as the two virtues and two saints by the ancient gods. The combination of the highest yang energy in the essence of the sun in the two energies of heaven and earth, and the combination of the energy of the Tai Yin energy in the essence of the moon, manifest the candlelight in the faint glow. At first, Luo Yu was not very certain. After all, according to ancient records, the two virtues and two saints were derived from the four symbols, which evolved into the supreme existence of countless ferocious beasts in the world. But the merger and arrangement of several guardian immortal arrays in the ancient heavenly court, coupled with the sealing of holy sites like Kunlun Mountain, made Luo Yu never expect other objects to have such strength and layout. It's just that no one has seen these two things from ancient times to the present day. Luo Yu realized that they didn't have a strong aura after escaping, but since they came out, they seemed to be constantly increasing their strength. So it seems that he dared not procrastinate, directly pushing his bloodline as the night-traveling Imperial Censor to the extreme, controlling the power of the night and attacking with several unparalleled treasures from his family. The bloodline of Luo Yu, who controls the power of the night, seems to contain some kind of divine power, which directly breaks the special balance between candlelight and Yueying, producing a violent explosion. He thought he had passed away at a young age, but unexpectedly, he was brought to the Douluo continent by the turbulence of time and space. However, his shrunken body was a bit dog-like, and the candlelight and hidden light that had harmed him were nowhere to be found. I don't know if it's still safe at home. Don't let the young master go all out for nothing. Forget it, Luo Yu sighed to himself. At a young age, he carried a prestigious and important position. For a long time, due to his responsibility to protect China, he didn't have much time for himself. Now, the alternative sacrifice can be considered as a relief for him. Just now, Luo Yu was actually using the power of the night to heal his injuries inside the carriage. He woke up early and learned some things. Shui Binger and the old man were in trouble, so he naturally wouldn't sit idly by, and that's why the scene just now happened. Having investigated his own physical condition, Luo Yu felt a bit bitter, and his divine powers were largely destroyed as his body shrank, almost being knocked back to their original form. Just now, forcefully activating the blood vessels was even more damaging, almost unable to support the dark night form. Is it the turbulence of time and space that has transformed one's body? Or did those two goods accidentally trick themselves? Fortunately, the bloodline of his clan's night-traveling censor can slowly restore divine power in the dark. As a once-lifetime genius, he is able to transform and control the power of the night. Although it may come at a cost and cannot be used frequently, he has temporarily gained some self-protection power. The skull hurts. Luo Yu has delicate facial features hanging down. On second thought, there is a saying that goes, instead of passively enduring, it is better to learn to silently enjoy next. Let's find a way to restore our strength and experience the journey of life. Looking at Shui Binger's beautiful appearance, the three children of Holy Soul Village are probably quite young. I need to calculate the timeline and sort it out. Luo Yu used the power of darkness to heal his wounds while pondering with his sword eyebrows. In a daze, it seemed like a long time had passed. The carriage stopped and footsteps rushed towards this side. Luo Yu restrained his breath and closed his eyes. Newcomers send a book and request tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Beauty controls the moon, falling in love at first sight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Beauty controls the moon, falling in love at first sight. A middle-aged man in purple with slightly grayish temples lifted the curtain of the carriage. Binger, is this the kid you and Yunhua rescued? Yes, Dad, please show him quickly, Shui Binger said as she stood outside the carriage. Shui Dongxing glanced diagonally at the inside of the car and retreated, frowning and saying, I heard that you and Yunhua were attacked on the road, and their lives were at stake. Do you still have the mood to care about these wild people on the roadside? Wild people. Your whole family is wild people. Upon hearing this in the car, Luo Yu suddenly felt that he was not doing well. He almost awakened his blood and went out to beat him up again, asking who was the real wild person. Shui Binger pinched the blue skirt with her left hand and bit her red lips, saying, if there weren't kind-hearted people on the way to help, your daughter wouldn't be able to come back either. You'd better show him. Shui Dongxing seemed to have already understood what had happened to his daughter. When he mentioned this, his teeth couldn't help but clatter, and his eyes showed an angry expression. He clenched his fists tightly, but he seemed to remember something, and his tone was a bit low. The Elephant Armor sect and the Martial Soul Hall have come together, and we have no direct evidence. We will temporarily notify the family members not to go out recently. Shui Binger's beautiful eyes darkened, but she understood her father's decision very well. Although her father's strength was also at the level of Soul Douluo, there was still a long way to go before the 89-level Elephant Armor sect leader Hu Yenjin. Thinking of this, Shui Binger's fingers pinching the hem of her skirt turned a bit pale due to excessive force, and her mind suddenly recalled the figure of that evil and domineering figure. If I had the strength of a benefactor, perhaps I could easily regain justice. At this moment, Luo Yu felt a bit restless. Is that how you save people, both of you? Why don't the injured start thinking about life? He now feels that his physical condition is very poor. He was already injured and forcefully mobilized the power of the Dark Knight to transform, causing him to lose all his strength and the energy in chi in various meridians to flow like threads, which are slightly undetectable. Just as Luo Yu was about to feign a cough to attract attention, a crisp and lively voice with a hint of an elf came over. Sister. I heard you saved a young man and came back. A beautiful and charming girl, who looked very similar to Shui Binger but had a different hair color and had a unique flavor, ran over from a distance wearing a wide-sleeved fairy skirt. Shui Dongxing angrily rebuked, Young man, what kind of young man? Can girls and families have a good image? Shui Binger also looked at her younger sister with some helplessness in her eyes. You pointed at her forehead and said, Dad is right. You little-brained cuckoo, you haven't been thinking about practicing all day. What are you thinking? Shui Yuer spat out her tongue at Shui Dongxing and shook her sister's arm in a coquettish manner, saying, Sister, you don't know what the market is in our college. They are all a group of fair-skinned, beautiful, and long-legged seductive sluts. What's there to look at? After speaking, Shui Yuer glanced at her father and flattened her lips, saying, We only have a bunch of old and frail men in our family. They only want to see handsome little brothers. Hee hee. Shui Dongxing sneered and said, Then you may be disappointed. Your sister didn't bring any little brothers back, just a wild boy in need of treatment. Oh, Shui Yuer seemed to have been dampened by her excitement and said with a hint of disappointment, Sister, you and Dad are busy with the right thing, so hurry up and save people. I'll just take a look next to them. Ha! Finally thinking of me. Luo Yu decided to leave this unreliable family as soon as his injury improved and he had the ability to protect himself during the day. The curtain of the carriage was once again lifted, and Shui Dongxing seemed to dislike the dirty body of Luo Yu, who was dressed in rags. He directly used his soul skill to condense an ice crystal chain and tied Luo Yu out of the carriage. Fortunately, his movements were not rough, and he directly laid him flat on the ground. The moonlight reflected on Luo Yu's face. The stains on the young man's face were nowhere to be found, revealing an unparalleled and charming face. Although his sharp and angular features were slightly immature, they concealed an indescribable noble temperament. Shui Wei Air. Shui Binger. Winky face. Shui Dongxing said, "What? Sister, you're lying." Shui Yuer pouted her red lips, her beautiful eyes fixed on Luo Yu's handsome face, refusing to let go for a moment, expressing her dissatisfaction with her sister. Shui Binger is already dumbfounded at this moment. Can she just save one and grow such a logo? That's not right. I remember when Uncle Hua and I found this guy, he had stains on his face and couldn't even see his appearance clearly. Why is it gone now? And this appearance seems a bit similar. Shui Binger's expression began to show a skeptical expression, and her body suddenly shook slightly in memories. Impossible. How could it be? He should have woken up halfway and wiped it himself. Upon hearing her sister's questioning, Shui Binger glared at her and said, "Just now, it was my dad who said there's no handsome guy, there's a debt to be held. Don't come to me, I don't know anything." Shui Dongxing was dissatisfied and said, "No matter how handsome you are you still just a wild kid?" Shui Yuer retorted, "What kind of wild boy? This is clearly the little prince sent to me by heaven." At this moment, her eyes were filled with small stars. Shui Dongxing was about to speak again, and Shui Yuer urged, "Dad, hurry up and treat the little brother. They still want to see the handsome appearance of the little brother. What kind of eyes will he have?" Shui Bing silently reached out her jade hand and combed her beautiful sea blue hair. "My younger sister is good everywhere. She has a beautiful appearance and a natural talent for cultivation, which is unparalleled in the academy. When will she become Yen Wang?" Alas, the man sneered at this, but couldn't resist his daughter's request, and couldn't refuse to save him. He immediately demonstrated his soul Douluo strength and gently injected his soul power into Luo Yu's body to heal and recover from his injuries. At this time, Luo Yu was receiving treatment from Shui Dongxing, and it must be said that the opponent's gentle soul power treatment effect was quite good. Although his dark injuries were not cured, they were effectively relieved. As for the fact that he accidentally wiped the stains on his face while transforming, he didn't care if the other party found out. If the other party thought he had a problem, he just left, and since it's not a big deal now. He is more worried about his current physical condition and going out alone. Once it's daytime, he doesn't have much combat power, and it's easy to hang out when encountering an unreasonable presence like a bandit. The Master of the Earth Town Night Master, although he is a tiger in peace, if he is mistakenly killed by a small minion as soon as he crosses to a different world, it will become a huge joke. After careful consideration, Luo Yu decided to let nature take its course. It would be safer to eat, drink, and mix some herbs to supplement his body at the Shui family first. He feels at ease to live and eat for free. The young master took the risk of saving 2 lives in your family. There's no need to commit to each other. It's not too much to just eat and stay here for a while, is it? Half a pillar of incense. Strange. Watching Luo Yu's aura stabilize, Shui Dong rose up with a puzzled expression on his face. Shui Binger didn't wait to speak, but Shui Yuer leaned over and nervously said, "What's wrong, Dad? Is little brother okay?" Shui Dongxing gritted his teeth and said, "What little brother, does this kid look younger than you? Is it important not to be small? What's important is to be handsome. What do you, an old man, know?" Shui Yuer sneered. "He looks so bad for the country and the people, and at first glance, he doesn't seem like a good guy," Shui Dongxing said with hatred as he stared at Luo Yu. "Humph, beauty is justice. You." Shui Dongxing was extremely angry. Shui Binger laughed and scolded, "All right, Yuer, don't be so angry with Dad. Isn't it because he locked you up at home for a while to practice? Even Yuer in our family is not so brainless, right? Hee. Shui Yuer's eyes showed a sly expression. This kid is a bit strange, Shui Dongxing thought to himself. The two women looked at each other at the same time. His roots and bones are very good, and his soul pulse is unobstructed, which is the only sign I have seen in my life. This is clearly a sign that only top-level martial souls can appear, Shui Dongxing analyzed. Is the bone very good? Shui Binger was puzzled. Shui Dongxing took a deep look at his daughter and said, I didn't know the difference between top-level martial souls and ordinary martial souls until I discovered the pattern with you and Yuer. The owners of top-level martial souls have naturally unobstructed limbs soul meridians, allowing them to practice soul power for thousands of miles in a day. However, the owners of ordinary martial souls often have blocked soul meridians, resulting in unsatisfactory cultivation speed. Your Ice Phoenix top-level beast martial soul is not only close to the innate full soul power, but also has a deep understanding of its roots and bones during your cultivation. Shui Binger nodded and hesitated, so he. Compared to you, you are only strong and not weak, sighed Shui Dongxing. Shui Yuer jumped excitedly and said, surprisingly stronger than my sister and me. Is it not only the handsome guy that sister picked up, but also a genius in cultivation? Shui Dongxing glared at her and said, not to mention whether there is any danger behind the genius of unknown origin, just referring to this kid, I haven't found any traces of practicing soul power on him. Dad, he hasn't awakened his martial soul yet, has he? Shui Binger's eyes flickered and speculated. Shui Dongxing waved his hand repeatedly and said, how could anyone in our mainland not awaken their martial soul after the age of 6? Let's not talk about major families. Although the Martial Soul Hall is a bit tough on family organizations like us, its treatment of civilians is still self-evident. At the age of 6, there is a chance to awaken the martial soul. That, Shui Dongxing thought and said, there are only two options now. Either wait for this young man to wake up and talk, or be safe and throw him out of the stall outside the province, which is pointless trouble. After speaking, Shui Dongxing walked towards the unconscious Luo Yu with ill intentions. Although Luo Yu closed his eyes, he completely felt the deep malice of an old father towards him. How could he let the other party throw him out? He is someone who wants face. Besides, it's still dark now. Just as he was about to leave the water house, a delicate body brought a faint fragrance of orchids to protect him. Shui Yuer separated Luo Yu and Shui Dongxing like a protective calf, staring at her beautiful eyes and saying, it's not safe to put him outside. Can you bear to see a young man fall from here? We saved him, even if his family came knocking on him, thank us, Shui Binger helped out from the side. Shui Dongxing patted his head and said with a headache, my aunts and grandmas, are you not afraid that he has enemies? It's just a matter, let's get in first. Let's make an agreement first. If someone comes to ask for someone, I will immediately hand them over. Shui Dongxing said seriously. Shui Yuer nodded repeatedly. Shui Binger silently sighed, understanding her father's feelings that the family's strength was not enough, so she had to be careful in everything. Looking at Luo Yu, Shui Yuer's thin and smooth red lips slightly curled up, and she extended her fingers as if to touch the other person's face. However, her small face began to blush a bit, and she withdrew her small hand, coincidentally swallowing saliva. It's not safe to throw such a handsome little brother out. There are so many beautiful women in Shuiqing today, and if they are caught and wasted by bad women, they will be in vain, murmured Shuyur in a low, imperceptible voice. What kind of tiger or wolf's words are all about lying in bed? Luo Yu was surprised. Does Douluo continent not only have girls developing their bodies early? Is thinking so early in avant-garde? End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Divine King's Judgment, Abyss Conspiracy. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 5 Divine King's Judgment. Abyss Conspiracy. Luo Yu was arranged to undergo low-key recuperation at the Water family in Tianshui City. It was precisely because of his sudden arrival that unknown variables were added to Douluo continent out of thin air, the unknown land far away from Douluo star. The clouds and mist, shining with gold and white, are ever changing, sometimes rolling like waves, and sometimes like a quiet beauty. The irregular and majestic scenery brings infinite beauty and shock to people. The thick vitality of heaven and earth lingers in the clouds and mist. If ordinary humans could come here, even with just a breath, they could extend their lifespan by 10 years. However, ordinary people cannot set foot here. Because this is the divine realm. Passing through the ancient forbidden area filled with manic dragon power, the towering palace shimmered with a faint golden radiance under the halo of the divine realm. This is the highest point of the entire divine realm and also the place that controls it. The Divine Realm Committee has the responsibility of judging the gods, as well as overseeing the divine realm and maintaining its rules. The main hall of the palace is presented in an octagonal shape, with countless scenes flickering around each wall. Each light curtain represents a world of different planets on Earth. This is also the place where the Divine Council controls each planet in each star domain. There seemed to be a light curtain that was almost shattered, revealing strange and bizarre colors of light, unable to see normal scenery, and terrifying storms seemed to appear from time to time. In the center of the main hall, there is a misty and endless round table, surrounded by 5 towering and majestic thrones. Above the thrones, there are 5 majestic divine kings gathered together, fiercely and intensively discussing. Douluo star suddenly lost contact without warning. I suggest sending someone to investigate. A gentle voice emanated from a woman wearing a water-green long skirt full of vitality, her face covered in a layer of golden mist, and her appearance was unclear. No, my law enforcement envoy happened to be patrolling outside Douluo star. Before losing contact, there was a warning of time and space turbulence. In the purple cloak, there were 2 red lights jumping, seemingly containing an endless sense of terror of destruction. Time and space turbulence. There was a brief pause inside the temple, followed by a startled sound that seemed to be quite wary of it. The universe around Douluo star has a vast territory and stable space. How could there be turbulence in time and space? A figure on the main position hesitated, shrouded in white ancient air currents. The purple-robed god said cautiously in a deep voice, "Don't say anything about these things. If a mortal planet loses contact, it will lose contact. We need to ensure that the chaos of time and space there won't move, and don't affect the divine realm here." The red-haired man, who had been sitting silently on his side, exuded an iron-blooded killing intent. His resolute voice suddenly came out. Douluo star can be avoided, but the safety of the divine realm must be guaranteed. I suggest using the Divine King's sealing formation to block the heavens and earth, and wait and see what happens before proceeding. The woman in the green dress couldn't bear to say, "The turbulent flow of time and space is certainly terrifying, but we need to explore it before making a decision. Is it like letting Douluo star ignore it?" The purple-robed goddess disdainfully said, "The safety of the divine realm is of utmost importance. A small Douluo star is nothing, and we must not allow the turbulent flow of time and space to have the opportunity to approach the divine realm." The figure wrapped in white airflow said, "The god of life doesn't need to worry. Douluo star may not be in trouble. Perhaps the turbulence of time and space only appears between the divine realm and Douluo star, separating the 2 connections. Let's follow what Shura said and first set up the Divine King to block the Great Formation just in case. It's not too late for us to return and explore when the chaos of time and space escapes far away." Okay, the first figure under the black airflow nodded. The 4 Divine Kings expressed their opinions at the same time, while the Life God King sighed helplessly and had to run towards the outer edge of the turbulent flow of time and space with their divine tools in hand. At the same time, in the endless dark space of the same territory as Douluo star, eerie atmosphere fills every corner. Great Abyss Saint, have you felt it? The sword hanging high above our heads seems to have suddenly disconnected. A hoarse and joyful voice came out, emitting a strong semi-divine aura. Are you sure? A majestic voice echoed from within the space. In the darkness, there seems to be a resurgence of supreme terror. Title Douluo, Super Douluo, Extreme Douluo, as the semi-divine aura ascends infinitely, it seems to have broken the boundaries of gods. The vast and majestic waves of divine consciousness pierce through the dark space, cautiously exploring towards the distance. In the darkness, the Abyss Saint touched a mouthful of blood, and a frightened voice came out. What power is so powerful that it lies horizontally between the divine realm and our plane? Fortunately, there is no isolation from the Douluo continent. Our plan, the figure asked for approval. Ha ha ha. After pondering for a long time, the Abyss Emperor's depression seemed to have finally been relieved. Don't worry, observe for a while. If the divine realm really can't appear, then our days of hiding in hiding will eventually come to an end. Yes. The figure frowned with joy and said respectfully and humbly. Holy Lord, the Meiji and Nightmare Emperors who sneaked into Douluo Star many years ago have not received any news. The figure hesitated. The Abyss Emperor waved his hand and said, there's no need to speak up. The two emperors naturally have tasks assigned by me. The situation in the divine realm is unknown, so let's hold our ground for now. Douluo continent, without the protection of the divine realm, Tianshui city, in the small garden of Shueijia. A young man dressed in black sportswear, with a demeanor like that of a banished immortal, was holding a piece of grass at the corner of his mouth. His expression was relaxed, and he leisurely stepped on the blue boulder, watching the fish playing in the pool. The business of the Shui family is not busy, but there are always maids who repeatedly walk slowly from Luo Yu's side, seemingly unintentionally. Two male servants, holding burlap in their hands, stood in the distance, pointing at Luo Yu and spat lightly, what's the origin of this kid? He came from this wall to the family, and there's no girl to give us a glance. Another person said strangely, it seems like a girl would have been following us without him coming. Grass, if it weren't for him, we might still be lucky enough to capture the favor of some maid with all our hard work. Since then, shameless women's souls have been taken away. Do we still have a chance? This kid doesn't look that big, right? What are you panicking about? Said the other person calmly. Do you know what I've been eavesdropping on lately? What? A few seductive and despicable people have started discussing how to seduce and flirt with each other. May said that if her name cannot be his first girlfriend, she will be his first woman. Is it really fake, lying on the bed? The servant refused. Don't talk about maids, take a look at what Miss Eyre is like now. She's already in a daze. If it weren't for Miss Eyre's protection, our family's servants wouldn't have been able to defeat these soulless kids. Your words remind me that no matter how handsome this guy is, he is not a soul master, and his status will never be much more noble than ours. At most, be a little white face, hold a golden thigh, and be by the side of a wealthy woman. As they spoke, the two servants looked at each other with complex eyes, and finally let out a long sigh. Endless envy turned to Luo Yu by the pool. Brother Yu, do you see what I have brought you? A beautiful girl with short dark green hair and hip-length hot pants, with two fair and slender legs exposed, hugging a blue crystal ball in her arms and carrying a bulging little bag behind her, ran over from a distance. Luo Yu spewed out the tender grass at the corner of his mouth speechlessly. How could this annoying spirit come again? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Diligent Moon, Strange Martial Soul Awakens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Diligent Moon, Strange Martial Soul Awakens. Luo Yu knew he couldn't explain his background clearly, so when he woke up, he directly engaged in a memory loss mode of asking 3 questions without knowing his name when facing the Water family father and daughter. At most, he only remembered his own name. According to Shui Dongxing's caution, seeing this, of course, he would not keep him, and Shui Binger was also hesitant and indecisive in weighing. But Shui Yuer was determined to take Luo Yu in, citing concerns about his personal safety. Everything else is fine, but what surprised Shui Dongxing was that the other party really didn't awaken their martial soul. Even if he tried to stimulate the soul power to extend to the other party's body, there was no reaction. Can there be anyone in Douluo continent who was over 6 years old and didn't participate in the martial soul awakening ceremony? However, the attack on Shui Binger and the current crisis facing the Shui family have restrained Shui Dongxing's attention, so since then, he has rarely paid attention to Luo Yu, an ordinary person. On the other hand, Shui Yuer has always remembered Luo Yu. Looking at the pure and beautiful Shui Yue who came with enthusiasm, Luo Yu felt a bit headache. After recent contact, he found that the other party was not only greedy for his beauty, but also somewhat sincere and simple. According to his observation, it is likely that Shui Dongxing, as the head of the family, does not spend much time with his daughter, while Shui Binger is devoted to improving her strength and revitalizing the college. It is imaginable that Shui Yuer has always lived a lonely life, and the women in the college do not know what thoughts have been inputted into her, and that's how it turned out. Brother Yu, guess what this is? Shui Yuer playfully revealed her 2 straight and snow-white legs, and stepped on a pair of exquisite green boots to approach Luo Yu's side, holding up the blue crystal ball with both hands. Luo Yu rolled his eyes secretly, didn't say a word, and took a subtle step back, widening the distance. Shui Yuer's moist lips pouted together, and Lu Yeshio's eyebrows tightened. She said discontentedly, "Brother Yu, am I a beast? If you see someone, just hide." Luo Yu waved his hand and said politely, "Miss Air is a famous ice-type genius girl in Tianshui City. I am just an ordinary person, and coming together will affect Miss's reputation." Shui Yuer retorted, "Oh. Well, if you hide from me like this, people who don't know may think it's because they're afraid I might damage your reputation." Luo Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Miss Air, there are many young heroes in Tianshui City who pursue you. As an ordinary person with amnesia, why bother you?" Shui Yuer's eyes, full of autumn water, glared at him disdainfully and said, "What kind of young handsome person? They are just a group of apprentices who covet the beauty and figure of this girl. Isn't there anyone you're interested in?" Luo Yu asked. Shui Yuer seemed to have remembered something and sneered, "There are some well-dressed and good-looking players, but they are all advanced players with wolf hearts hidden behind them. I really thought they could deceive me." Luo Yu's forehead almost showed a black line. This woman knows everything and is a bit arrogant. Why does she look so average next to her? He felt that he knew too little about women. After all, although he had countless pursuers in his previous life, he was wholeheartedly responsible for guarding China with the Night Palace Department and had no intention of having a romantic relationship with women. "Alright, Brother Yu, you always say that one of us is an ordinary person and the other is a soul master. We can't play together. Didn't I bring you the martial soul awakening stone?" Shui Yuer smiled, like the blooming snow lotus in the Tian Shan Mountains. Luo Yu repeatedly pushed his hands to stop him. Although he also wanted to awaken his martial soul, he wouldn't do such a thing in front of everyone. God knows what kind of martial soul he will awaken from his Chinese bloodline. If there is any abnormality, it may not be easy to end. When he lacks strength, it is better to be low-key and cautious. Shui Yuer thought that Luo Yu was worried about awakening his abandoned martial soul and comforted him, "Brother Yu, don't worry. Dad said your bones are very good, and your martial soul is probably not too bad. Although you missed the golden age of cultivation, you can at least become a soul master." Luo Yu's mouth twitched slightly. "Do you think I'm afraid of awakening the useless martial soul and losing face? I'm afraid that the Chinese bloodline is too scary. Who knows if he might accidentally awaken and produce a third emperor and 5 emperors." Shui Yuer placed the crystal ball on the blue stone and took out 6 dark awakening stones from the small bag behind her, quickly forming a six-pointed star formation on the ground. "Brother you can come in without moving, just let me come," Shui Yuer shouted. Luo Yu looked strange and bent down to pick up the black stones one by one. He took a small bag and reassembled them together. Shui Yue seemed to want to stop him, but she raised her hand and still didn't touch his body. In fact, Luo Yu has also noticed this recently. Although Shui Yue has some fanaticism and is very close to him, she always maintains a certain distance in her body. "Brother Yu, what are you doing?" Shui Yue asked. "I may have mentioned that the awakening of martial souls has become a bit nervous, especially when outsiders are present, so I'm even more panicked. So you'd better let me go back and try it out alone." During his speech, Luo Yu picked up the small bag containing the awakening stone, disregarding the crystal ball that tested his innate soul power, and fled towards the outside as if fleeing. Shui Yue didn't stop him and showed a ghostly expression. "Humph, there's no soul power to activate it. I'll see how you activate the formation and awaken yourself," she said. Luo Yu left the water mansion with his small pocket in hand and ran towards the outside of Tianshui City, with a look of concern in his eyes. Every night, he uses the power of the night to heal his injuries, and his body has basically recovered. However, his strength is still limited due to unknown reasons causing his body to shrink. Only at night can one activate their bloodline and transform to restore a certain level of strength by relying on the sufficient dark night power accumulated over a long period of time. But the strength during the day cannot be guaranteed, so there is a lack of self-protection ability. It seems that awakening the martial soul is really imperative. After a long time, Luo Yu walked quickly to a mountain depression, where a natural stalactite cave was hidden. This is the location he discovered during his previous night exploration of the surrounding situation of Tianshui City. After a cautious exploration, Luo Yu found no one around and approached the cave to retrieve black obsidian. With an unforgettable and astonishing memory, she arranged the six-star awakening formation in the order of Shui Yue, and stepped in and closed her eyes directly. At this moment, she carefully restrained her breath and followed closely by a beautiful figure who didn't make any sound. She was somewhat puzzled, although she suspected why Luo Yu came back here, she still had an expression of waiting to see the good play. "Humph, without soul power, it depends on how you activate the formation." Luo Yu was negligent. He never expected that a soul master would have nothing to do with tracking him, an ordinary person. At this moment, he was trying to mobilize the weak energy that had been cultivated in his body. Inside the cave, there was silence, and Shuyur, who was hiding in the dark to watch the show, showed a proud expression and secretly said, "It's still not possible without me. Without soul power, it's impossible to activate the awakening formation. I've never heard of anyone who can awaken her martial soul." Just as she was about to step out of ridicule, the six-pointed star formation slowly lit up with golden light, which grew stronger and stronger, until it resembled an inverted golden bowl, enveloping Luo Yu's tall but slightly immature body. Shui Yue was shocked. How could it be possible? If this guy has a martial soul and soul power, what is he doing now? If the martial soul has not been awakened yet, how can it use soul power to activate the formation? The power of the formation was like a spark, triggering the gunpowder barrel of Luo Yu. The surging golden light surged like a sea of clouds within the formation, and then angrily bounced towards the entire cave. Shui Yue ignored her doubts just now and her beautiful eyes trembled repeatedly. This is awakening the martial soul. How could there be such power? Wow! Within the golden torrent that pervades the entire cave, there seems to be a hint of blue-green and black crystal that is timeless, emitting an atmosphere of primitive simplicity. The green dots kept zooming in and turned out to be a phantom of a blue and black flag full of mysterious patterns and demonic aura. However, the flag looked dilapidated and seemed to be heavily damaged, disappearing into Luo Yu's heavenly spiritual cover. Shuyur ignored the dazzling golden light and wiped her eyes, feeling somewhat puzzled. Just now, it seemed like there was a black hammer shadow and a circular object flashing through the golden light. The golden light inside the cave slowly dissipated, and Shui Yuer let out a sigh of relief with her beautiful eyes wide open. She stared at Luo Yu in surprise, wondering who he was and what kind of martial soul he had awakened. How could it be so terrifying? She was about to come forward and question. Who would have thought it was the end of the awakening ceremony, but now it has just begun. In the almost extinguished six-pointed star formation, a golden sun and a bright moon appeared in the palms of Luo Yu's left and right hands, emitting an unusual golden and silver radiance. A terrifying aura quickly spread through the relatively spacious stalactite cave, causing the earth to tremble. The cave also began to crumble in an instant, as if in supreme existence was about to emerge. 2600 word seal. There is still one more update today. Brother, we have already signed the book and it's almost in a new state. You can rest assured to consume it. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Yin Yang and Tu Qi derive from innate nature. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Yin Yang and Tu Qi derive from innate nature. How could this be possible? Shuyuer was opening her cherry lips, her face pale with disbelief hanging on her delicate and bright face. She can be considered a somewhat famous genius in Tianshui City and a top student in Tianshui Academy. However, at this time, the terrifying vision generated by Luo Yu's awakening completely exceeded her understanding. She had not yet figured out the three mysterious illusions that had appeared in the previous golden light, and the subsequent eruption of power was unimaginable. The dense mist of gold and silver filled the entire cave, and two energy tornadoes with vastly different atmospheres spiraled up from the bottom. A pillar of gold and silver light rose from the ground as if piercing through the rocks and soaring towards the sky. Cluck, cluck. Luo Yu gritted his teeth and struggled to withstand the violent energy within his body. When the awakening formation was first activated, the three faint waves that surged out gave him a very familiar feeling, and then two majestic and unfamiliar atmospheres suddenly erupted, catching him off guard. At this moment, he only felt like his body was fighting like a fairy, trapped in a state of ice and fire, half extremely hot and half as cold as frost. The two seem to have no conscious existence, but instinctively compete for each other's territory within Luo Yu's body. They seem to lack energy and are eager to manifest and reappear in the human world. Luo Yu naturally suffered greatly, whether it was an illusion or a misunderstanding. At this moment, there seemed to be ancient beasts rushing and howling in his ears, with dragons and tigers roaring, turtles and phoenixes roaring, and even the roar of countless divine beasts. Drink. He felt a sharp pain in his body meridians, as if he was about to collapse and tear them apart at this moment. Suddenly, in the extreme pain of ice and fire, it seemed that some inexplicable and ethereal supernatural energy was being released to heal his wounds, and his body, which was about to disintegrate, was unexpectedly pulled back. The constantly repairing meridians and flesh seemed to have a hint of crystal clear and inexplicable charm added between them. But even though the physical body has improved at this moment, it quickly falls into the crazy torment of two divine powers. What's even more terrifying is that the energy produced by the two divine powers seems to be not good. Luo Yu felt like he suddenly became extremely thirsty, his lower abdomen became hot and dry like a fire, and something uncontrollably opened his eyes. When did these two ghosts hit me? Luo Yu's consciousness was a bit dazed under the extreme devastation of two divine powers, and a lingering calmness determined the source of the energy. The corners of his mouth showed a trace of bitterness. The combination of yin and yang and the essence of the sun and the moon made him the two great gods of the legendary source of beasts, which his small body could bear. Labor and capital have just achieved success and sacrificed their lives for the country. It has not been 2 days since they unloaded the burden of the Dark Night Lord, and they have not enjoyed a day of leisure in Douluo. Should it be so cold? I am not willing to accept it. The collective uprising of two surging mighty divine powers, coupled with the inexplicable power generated by the interaction between the two, constantly stirred in his body. Luo Yu's eyes were red, and his tightly clenched teeth let out a heavy breath. If labor and capital have a next life, let go of their responsibility. Labor and capital should enjoy it well and taste all the beauty in the world. Hehe, it's a bit regrettable. How can there be reincarnation in this world? It's just a foolish delusion. Luo Yu's heart was filled with a disdainful and bitter smile, unable to deceive himself. A hint of pain and pride naturally appeared at the corner of his mouth. I have fulfilled my duties throughout my life, always guarding the dark night of China. I cannot tolerate any recklessness from ghosts, snakes, or gods. I have been a member of my family for 5 years, and anyone who hears of my name is not frightened or frightened. I am truly worthy of the name of a genius in the Night Travel Censor clan. I have missed this point in my past life, and Luo Yu has some regrets for nothing. Roughly recalling, I once suppressed my personal desires to the extreme in the face of the responsibility of my country and the world, without any freedom at all. I never regret the responsibility I have shouldered in this life, but if there really is an afterlife I probably want to be a carefree playboy genius. Luo Yu could sense that even with the presence of the Jiaodai supernatural force, his body had reached a true critical point, and the energy contained in the Yin-Yang two saints was far more than what he knew so far. It's probably too late for these two things to truly erupt. Under the influence of the pond fish, the Douluo continent may have disappeared. Luo Yu's eyes flashed with an unbearable and resolute emotion. I may die, but I cannot implicate the innocent. Although this ruined temple is small, it is not a place where you can come and go whenever you want. Luo Yu gritted his teeth tightly, and between his lips and teeth, a trail of crimson blood seeped out. With all his strength, he lifted himself up and shimmered with Jin Hui, moving Haori's palm. His trembling fingers skillfully picked up a mysterious magic formula. The Night Lord has been in charge of the method of self-destruction in the desperate situation for generations. When the seal is formed, it is the time when the path of death disappears and the enemy is silenced. However, the sky did not meet people's wishes, and halfway through the gathering of the Dharma seal, Luo Yu's body suddenly made a loud explosion. At this moment, the golden and silver rays exploded to their limits, and his consciousness was instantly confused. Although the power of a combination of gold and silver rays was weak, it suddenly emerged as a new force. While wandering through Luo Yu's body to repair his meridians, inexplicable heat and uncontrollable physical signs appeared on his body. The rocks rolled and fell with a crackling sound. The charming Shuyuer was already stunned by the stunning sight, and only woke up when the rocks fell. Her two fair and slender legs took lotus steps inside the cave to dodge repeatedly. Until she saw a half-person high boulder about to fall from Luo Yu's head, Shuyuer's beautiful eyes flashed with a quick look, and her martial soul instantly possessed her. She shot several ice arrows in her hand and shattered the boulder. The silver and gold colors on Luo Yu's body were about to fade, but his face turned terrifyingly red. His lower abdomen became even more ferocious, but Shuyuer was completely unaware of it. Watching the painful expression on Luo Yu's exceptionally handsome face, Shuyuer felt a great deal of heartache and quickly approached the man's body while resisting the boulder. "Brother Yu, what's wrong with you? Brother Yu, you should say something." Shuyuer was at a loss when she first saw this situation, and in a moment of urgency, a mist even appeared in the corner of her eyes. Roar! Luo Yu's once bright black eyes, like stars, have now become unconsciously blood-red like wild beasts. His eyes are covered in bloodshot, emitting painful screams, as if enduring unimaginable torment. "Brother Yu, it's my fault. I shouldn't have let you awaken your martial soul." At this moment, Shuyuer believed that the absence of a martial soul before Luo Yu's amnesia must have been due to similar situations in the past, which led to the failure of awakening. At this moment, Luo Yu's pain was entirely caused by her use of the awakening stone, and her heart was filled with guilt. Upon hearing Shuyuer's delicate and urgent crying, Luo Yu, who was scattered and unconscious, turned his head. The blood-red suppressed pupils reflected the girl's straight and beautiful body. Brother Yu. Shui Yuer hesitated as the pear blossoms dripped with rain. Without a response, a man's body quickly approached him, and a strong, hot, and restless male aura rushed towards him. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Cave Awakens, Moon Suffers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Cave Awakens, Moon Suffers. Bang, the strong breath and faint daughter fragrance intertwined in an instant, and the two fell heavily to the ground. Shuyuer's wide-sleeved flowing fairy skirt seemed to fall from the sky to dust, and her fair and slender legs were also stained with dust. Whispering. Shuyuer didn't care about the pain, and never expected that Luoyu, who had always been indifferent to her, would suddenly pounce with red eyes and panic. You go away quickly. Shui Yuer never had such close contact with a man from childhood to adulthood. Her pretty face was flushed with a hint of panic, and she instinctively pushed and shoved with her hands. However, she did not expect that at this moment, Luoyu had lost consciousness to the outside world. Under the influence of special forces, Luoyu seemed to be a thirsty traveler in the desert urgently seeking water sources. The cool breath on Shui Yuer's body undoubtedly summoned him at every moment. Luoyu, please wake up. Her delicate voice was both angry and urgent, even tinged with tears. As if receiving immense stimulation, Luoyu's flushed face showed a look of urgency, and his hands extended a strong force. Tear it apart. Shuyuer was greatly surprised, her beautiful eyes staring wide. She raised her hand to summon the martial soul to repel the man in front of her who was reckless. However, seeing Luoyu's abnormal behavior and crimson eyes, she couldn't understand that the other party had lost consciousness. In just 1 second of being stunned, Luoyu was given some free time, and Shui Yuer almost screamed out in pain. Shui Yuer bit her red lips tightly, feeling both embarrassed and annoyed. Although I also have a good impression of you, this is absolutely not allowed. I'm sorry. The young girl's martial soul was possessed, and the water blue light burst out in an instant, about to pop away the greedy Luoyu. However, Luoyu's body seemed to react, and a silver glow shone from the bright moon in his right palm. As the silver light fell, the young girl's martial soul seemed to have encountered a natural enemy and began to flicker. Her soul power was chaotic and difficult to concentrate. In a daze, her cherry lips and small mouth, like a peach, were directly invaded and occupied. Woo-woo, in the chaotic cave, only Luoyu, dressed in rags and with bloodstains on his lips, lay quietly, while the charming young girl was nowhere to be found, and fragments of a thin veil of fairy skirt scattered on the ground. Cough and cough, the sound of coughing echoed in the quiet cave, and as Luoyu's chest trembled, his eyes opened from the darkness and he sat up in shock, covering his forehead. Pain. Luoyu's eyes were filled with confusion, feeling as if every cell in his body was transmitting a sense of intense pain, as if he had experienced unimaginable devastation. In the excruciating pain, every meridian and flesh in the body seemed to be mixed with a hint of coolness, like a handful of clear water suddenly arriving in a dry desert. Although it was not enough, it quenched thirst. In pain, Luoyu raised his hand and touched the corner of his lips, only to find bloodstains. His lips and tongue were both damaged, and fragments of memories came to mind. Remembering the 2 virtues and 2 saints, causing a commotion in the heavenly palace inside his body, Luoyu disregarded the remaining pain and jumped up. He nervously touched his body, realizing that he was still alive. Although Luoyu was confused and puzzled as to why he was safe and sound, he still let out a long sigh of relief and said, "It's good to be alive, it's good to be alive." Suddenly, he became alert again. This 2 virtues and 2 saints was ultimately a time bomb-like disaster in his body. If it was not resolved, something would happen sooner or later. Not to mention his death, the Douluo continent would probably end up playing with him. What exactly happened this time? When did they enter my body? What does it have to do with awakening my martial soul? Is it true that if I don't awaken my martial souls, they won't appear? How did I survive? Why didn't these two things explode? Is it a discovery of conscience? Luo Yu's mind gradually became clear, but at the same time, a series of questions arose that he couldn't solve. Wait. Did I forget something very important? A fragmented and fragrant memory clip flashed through Luo Yu's mind. The woman's clear and bright pupils were full of panic, the corners of her eyes were stained with shallow tears, her delicate and dripping red lips were tightly pursed together, and her fair little face wore a frightened expression. Impossible, where did a woman come from in a good cave? Luo Yu was startled. He frowned and pondered, scanning the thin gauze fragments of the fairy's skirt on the ground. A pitiful young girl curled up at the edge of the cave, like a small beast, her eyebrows and eyes were filled with fear. Her slender and snow-white legs were fully displayed, and the red marks hanging on them were even more heartbreaking. This Luo Yu fell silent, his handsome and dusty face uncertain for a moment, racking his brains to imagine what had happened, but he could never figure out what had happened. He frowned as he looked at the scattered fragments of clothing on the ground, clenched his fists, and fiercely smashed towards the walls of the cave. Click, the stone wall cracked into cracks in response, but Luo Yu paid no attention to the crimson oozing from his fist. He recognized the owner of the skirt and was eager to know what had happened. Hurrying out of the cave and looking at the bright sunshine, Luo Yu's mood was somewhat chaotic. One was that the two virtues and two saints were ultimately hidden dangers, and the other was what was happening in his mind about the girl. Glancing at his already loose waistband, the tying technique was clearly not his own, and a hint of bitterness appeared at the corner of Luo Yu's mouth. Why is it easy and enjoyable for others to awaken their martial souls? Adding twin martial souls is better than slapping a group of people. Even someone like me who is simple and low-key, hiding in a cave to awaken can cause unexpected disasters. What kind of thing is this all called walking on the road? Recalling the thrills of the awakening process, Luo Yu felt palpitations. Walking again between life and death, his mentality underwent a significant change. The top priority is to figure out what is going on with the awakening of martial souls and Shui Yuer. After successfully resolving these two, there was a sense of relief and longing between Luo Yu's eyebrows. When the time came, the young master wanted to live a more free and unrestrained life, no matter how refreshing it was. At the entrance of the water mansion in Tianshui City, Luo Yu remained calm and asked the gatekeeper, "Brother, have you seen Miss Air come back?" The gatekeeper shook his head coldly. "Not coming back." Luo Yu was surprised in his heart. There shouldn't be any trouble, but he knew that many girls in their past lives would be unable to bear it. My personal search ability is also limited, so it's better to seek help from Shui Binger. As for what will happen after finding Shuyuer, Luo Yu doesn't know, but as a man, if something happens, he must take responsibility. As Luo Yu walked into the mansion, the gatekeeper spat lightly with disdain and said, "Either Miss Air is there to protect her, or she's just a little white face who eats and drinks, and deserves to be sworn brothers with my soul master." The tattered clothes of Luo Yu attracted the attention of the maids on the road, and the beautiful maids even boldly cast seductive glances. If Luo Yu were a soul master, these maids wouldn't be so bold, but in their eyes, Luo Yu was just an ordinary person with extraordinary beauty, so undoubtedly he was much more unrestrained. In addition to the maidservants, there were also some elderly and powerful women in the clan who were also interested in Luo Yu. "When Miss Air gets tired of it, let's see if we can bring this mortal boy to my side," someone fantasized with a wicked smile. At this moment, Luo Yu had already walked to another courtyard, where Shui Binger and Shui Yuer lived adjacent to each other. He was about to come forward and knock on Shui Binger's door, but he heard the continuous ping-pong sound of throwing porcelain and smashing cabinets from the room next to her new book Seedlings. "I hope everyone can understand and support me, and let it grow strong." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The 3 Damaged Spiritual Tools, Exploring. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The 3 damaged spiritual tools, exploring Luo Yu's pupils contracted. Is Shueiyue already back early? Looking at Shui Binger's room again, there was no movement, probably busy practicing again. Otherwise, it would be impossible for his sister's room to remain indifferent to such a big commotion. Luo Yu finally let go of his hanging heart and breathed a sigh of relief. It was good to be back, but if Shueiyue was stimulated and stayed outside, it would be troublesome. On the way, he had already figured it out and found Shueiyue to understand the situation with the other party. If he really did something outrageous, he should compensate and be responsible, and there was no other good way. Perhaps he has been staying at the Jinya Bureau for a long time. He never likes to do anything complicated and cumbersome. He always acts swiftly and straightforwardly, in other words, it is called decisive killing. Dang dang dang, Luo Yu tidied up his mood, although his expression was a bit complicated, he still knocked on the door in the end. Bang dang, the door frame trembled, as if a vase had been thrown and dropped. The sound of knocking on the door clearly alarmed the girl, and Shueiyue heard a nearly hoarse cry. Don't disturb me. Luo Yu remained silent for a long time, and there was gradually no movement inside the house. He flashed a hint of decisiveness and pushed open the door. The room was completely messy, with fragments of vases and utensils scattered on the ground. The luxurious velvet carpet was in disarray, and the once youthful girl was now wearing her changed thin pajamas, sobbing like an injured little beast lying by the bed. The sound of opening the door triggered Shueiyue's sensitive nerves, and she quickly flicked her hair, looking cautiously towards this side. She was slightly stunned when she saw that it was Luo Yu, especially when she saw the other person's shabby clothes, and her emotions were a bit out of control. She clenched her red lips and yelled shyly, "Get out of here." Luo Yu shook his head and said, "Miss Air, how could you appear in the cave where I awakened? What exactly happened at that time? I have completely lost consciousness since then." "Oh, how could you even know that I've been in a cave when you lose consciousness?" Shueiyue seemed to remember something and asked with her white hair pinched by her small hand. Luo Yu covered his head and said, "I'm not quite sure about the specific situation, only some scattered memory fragments appear." Shueiyue suddenly stood up, looking a bit flustered. "What do you remember?" Luo Yu said solemnly, "Miss Yue, nothing else is important. I just want to tell you that if I unintentionally do something that harms you, I, Luo Yu, will definitely take responsibility." Shueiyue looked at Luo Yu with serious eyes, but only with serious eyes. Although there was also an apology inside, there was nothing else. "You go. Nothing happened, you don't need to take responsibility." A cold voice came from Shueiyue's mouth, as if someone else had changed. Luo Yu was about to speak again, and Shueiyue's red eyes showed a stubborn expression. "I was curious to have followed you over, and it has nothing to do with you. You should go out immediately now," she said. Luo Yu nodded and said, "I understand." The man decisively turned around and left, gently closing the door. Shueiyue clenched her teeth and stared at her beautiful red eyes. As the door closed, she collapsed onto the bed, becoming somewhat dazed. Ching Song Yu pinched the bedsheet tightly and said, "Damn it. I don't need any mercy, Mississippi." She was naturally ashamed and angry when she was bullied by Luo Yu, but she didn't know for a moment whether to blame the other person or blame herself when she thought it was her own awakening and secretly following her to the cave. Just now when she saw that Luo Yu had returned safely, she was actually relieved. After all, the scene of life being more dangerous than death when Luo Yu woke up earlier was too dangerous. The pain emanating from her well-developed chest, coupled with the thought of a heart-wrenching scene, caused Shueiyue's beautiful eyes to tighten, and her expression of sadness and anger surged once again. Luo Yu's compensatory gaze further exacerbated her embarrassment. "Bastard, no one dares to touch me from childhood to adulthood. Miss, I treat you so well and treat you like a friend. How could you think?" Luo Yu returned to his room, took off his scattered clothes, and walked into the bathroom. His sturdy upper body had not many scratches, but was deeply immersed, as if he had been baptized. He was still feeling a bit dizzy at the moment, unable to recall too many things. In his previous life, he either practiced or was in charge of various matters within the company. Where did he have a romantic relationship with children? I never thought he would lose it so inexplicably for the first time. It is true that there is some stagnation. Just now, with his keen observation ability, I saw a lot from Shui Yuer. The most important thing was that Shui Yuer showed most of the girl's shyness and frustration, but only no hatred. The other party's clear attitude of love and hate couldn't help but make Luo Yu look sideways, and his understanding of Shui Yuer couldn't help but deepen a bit. Upon careful consideration, Shui Yuer has been very kind to herself since she entered the mansion, but she has never made any unreasonable demands. Although her words may be a bit fanciful, she has always maintained a certain distance. Luo Yu's black eyes began to soften, as if the heartstrings had been stirred by the beautiful girl, and he had made a decision in his heart. However, the top priority is to first figure out what is going on with these two saints of yin and yang, otherwise it will be difficult to sleep and eat. Luo Yu raised his palm and carefully recalled and analyzed the process of awakening his martial soul at that time. Based on the situation at that time, Luo Yu's thoughts became much clearer after peeling off the cocoon. These two masters are probably the culprits who caused the chaos of time and space, driving themselves to travel an unknown distance to Douluo. Could it be that inexplicable evolution occurred while traveling through time and space, so they eventually ran into themselves? Cautiously probing his body, Luo Yu couldn't help but feel a little startled. He found 3 faint and familiar auras and 2 ancient auras lurking within his body. Did the 3 of you follow along too? Luo Yu was first delighted, and then his spirit explored 3 points of light. The complex patterns on the black iron hammer are dull and lifeless, the green and black small flag's spiritual charm is not obvious, and the golden gong's divinity is greatly reduced. Feeling that his 3 treasures were severely damaged and almost completely scattered, leaving only virtual shadows, he felt a slight twitch and heartache at the corner of his mouth. These 3 are my own powerful treasures, and their power is unimaginable. Now it seems that my strength has been greatly damaged, and I don't know if I can still unleash all these divine powers. However, it seems that these 3 spiritual entities still exist, and they do not exist as their own martial souls. Did those 2 pit goods become their own martial souls? While guessing, Luo Yu cautiously explored his consciousness towards the other 2 places. I saw a small golden ball and a curved silver crescent wrapped in various hues of light, appearing to be in a state of wandering, constantly evolving into new forms, with the light and shadow of dragons, phoenixes, and 4 elephants constantly passing by. There are also 2 circular rings surrounding the sphere and crescent respectively, which are mysterious and cannot be seen for their composition or function. If such an anomaly were to be seen outside, Luo Yu would surely applaud, but if it appeared in his body, it would be trembling. Luo Yu paused and boldly extended his consciousness forward, realizing that the 2 energies or divine powers did not reject him, and even welcomed and longed for him. What's the situation? I used to mess with the young master to the death, but now what's pleasing me? In his days, Luo Yu gritted his teeth and vowed to explore the truth, actively extending his consciousness into 2 different images. In an instant it was like thunder stirring the earth fire, and a dazzling light burst out from his body. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Enlightenment of Martial Soul, Evil Fate, and Local Specialty. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Enlightenment of Martial Soul, Evil Fate, and Local Specialty. The dazzling light immediately spread around Luo Yu, filling the entire room. Fortunately, it was daytime at this moment, and there didn't seem to be such a big reaction outside. In an instant, Luo Yu felt his body enter a state of dual heaven of ice and fire. His left palm was extremely hot, while his right palm transmitted a bone-chilling cold, and the 2 seemed to have an inherent connection and mutual attraction. At this moment, Haori and Inoue were floating together. His palms were shining, as if he had experienced 1,000 years of ancient times. Behind him, there were two majestic shadows about to emerge from his body. The two virtual shadows are constantly condensing and appearing, and their forms seem to be undergoing both mysterious changes. The virtual shadows of the exotic beasts in the Dao are accompanied by a short and low roar, and between the floating light and sweeping shadows, the soaring golden dragon, the dancing ice phoenix, the killing white tiger, and the dark heavy Xuanwu seem to be among them. Just as the phantom had just solidified a little, Luo Yu's face began to change dramatically, instantly turning extremely pale. A burst of blood spurted out, and all the strange images in the room disappeared instantly. Luo Yu suddenly opened his eyes, his breath unstable, and he appeared to be greatly weakened, but his handsome and dusty face had a rare surprise look on it. After observing and probing just now, he found that the two virtues and two saints hidden in his body did not seem to contain much terrifying energy, but rather seemed to have run out of oil, leaving only two primordial powers. Most importantly, he also discovered that these two primordial forces had no consciousness or spiritual existence at all, and seemed to have become an ownerless thing, let alone establishing a certain degree of intimate connection with his body at an unknown time. And just now he also noticed a special force appearing in his body along with the two primordial forces, which also triggered the illusion formed by the two primordial forces. Are they becoming their own martial souls? Is that special force that can trigger them the innate soul power that I awaken? How could it be? The famous things from ancient times just belonged to him so easily. Luo Yu couldn't figure out the specific reason, but still had some doubts in his heart and didn't rush to be happy. He recalled carefully, and his heroic sword eyebrows couldn't help but start to rise. This, two virtues and two saints, Yuying and Zhuzhao, no matter how great their supernatural powers and creations are, have been suppressed by several divine formations of the ancient heavenly court from ancient times to the present day. They have not been nourished by external energy and have not been completely consumed, but have been able to escape from poverty, which is quite remarkable. Do they belong to me because they have exhausted their energy from escaping? Is the pain of the previous awakening of martial souls a complete fusion with their own bodies? In fact, Luo Yu's guess is very close to the truth. Several supreme formations crisscrossing the vast expanse are locked together with Yuying and Candlelight. Their power has gradually dissipated in the long years, leaving only a faint and speechless true spirit. If no one had restrained them at the beginning of their escape, allowing them to absorb enough energy for thousands of years, they might still be able to regain their divine power. However, by chance, Luo Yu's reckless gameplay and the chaos of time and space caused by the explosion destroyed their last trace of true spirit. Finally, by chance, the power of the unowned origin fell onto Luo Yu. During his contemplation, Luo Yu wanted to test it again. Without understanding what was going on, he felt like a cat had scratched him, making it difficult for him to sleep and eat. Inspired by the soul power, both palms lit up simultaneously, and two supernatural virtual shadows were about to appear. Luo Yu felt the immense pressure emanating from his body and quickly withdrew his soul power. This time, he finally let go of his suspended heart. Although he was not sure about the specific process, it was very likely that the two virtues and two saints became a martial soul and belonged to him alone. The feeling that came from his body just as he was stirring up his martial soul gave him a faint realization. At this time, these two martial souls cannot manifest in the world. It should be because the quality of the martial souls is too advanced, and their slightly immature body is not enough to support their possession and manifestation. Luo Yu's face showed joy, without excessive ecstasy. He swung his fist vigorously, but his physical condition was not good. He had many methods of refining his body to quickly increase his physical strength, and the time to summon the martial soul according to plan would not be delayed too long. Get out of bed and walk to the window, looking out with your head, there is no one around. Luo Yu sighed a bit. I didn't expect to awaken these two martial souls, and I don't know what kind of power there will be. In fact, he thought that as a descendant of Yan and Huang, he would awaken a 5-clawed golden dragon that traversed thousands of miles. However, it's also good. Luo Yu felt that the specific divine powers of the 2 virtues and 2 saints were probably far from so simple, and he didn't have the opportunity to show them in detail. He still needed to master exploration in the future, and the special power of Jiaotai that caused him to lose his mind could not be found at this moment. As night fell, the room was pitch black, with a faint hint of a rich black hue dancing. Luo Yu closed his eyes and sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by strands of dark golden night power that turned into small threads converging towards his body. The dark injuries he had suffered during the day were rapidly recovering. After finishing his work, a cloud of turbid qi was expelled, and Luo Yu's eyes were blazing with flames. 2 fine rays of light flickered through it. Fortunately, although the power of the 2 virtues and 2 saints has washed away my body, it has not changed my original bloodline, Luo Yu said happily. According to the current progress of absorbing and storing the power of the Dark Night, you can use the Master Transformation once in about a month. Luo Yu nodded, which was acceptable. He had awakened his martial soul, and as his cultivation gradually improved in the future, the time interval between transformations would also become shorter and shorter. At this current time point, it is estimated that Sanwazi has just arrived at Shrek to work hard, and there is not much turbulence in Douluo continent, which is enough for him to develop. The crisis has been resolved, and Luo Yu's mentality has changed a lot. He has made up his mind to live a bit more carefree and free this time, as long as he does not violate his principles and does as he pleases. At this moment, Luo Yu became interested. What are the characteristics of Douluo continent? Food. Forget it, it's probably better to research some specialty snacks and get them on the market by yourself. You can see the martial soul of the martial arts technique, and it seems that the explosive ring skill of Haotian's sect is quite interesting. You can find a way to borrow it. In terms of scenery, the land of the far north. See God Island. That pristine starry forest is also good. After studying for half a day, Luo Yu discovered the biggest feature of Douluo continent. It seems like beauty. The majestic female pope of the Imperial sister, the cat girl Zhu Zhuqing with a childlike appearance of 36D, the sacred and noble Qian Rengshu, the infatuated and charming Helena, and the ancient and mysterious Ning Rongrong Ekov. Luo Yu coughed a few times and patted his chest. Our men are just curious and want to see the local specialties of Douluo continent. There is nothing embarrassing about this idea. Suddenly, the beautiful figure of Shuyuer flashed through his mind, and he remembered his pitiful and shy face. Luo Yu felt a headache and had been busy practicing all afternoon, almost forgetting about this incident. It's all a bad fate. There will be another chapter later, please ask for tickets. End of this chapter.